As Rangers fans, we know that a goaltender is the backbone of a hockey team. At Abundant Wealth Management, we are your financial backbone, offering financial planning, wealth management, tax planning, and estate planning services. To schedule your free consultation, head to www.abundant-wealth.com. That's www.abundant-wealth.com. Abundant Wealth Management. Live, plan, triumph.
You're listening to Rangers Radio, your home for end-to-end coverage of the New York Rangers. With your hosts, Brendan Azoff, Zach Domino, and Steve Pappas. Blue Shirts fans, the puck drops now.
Welcome to Rangers Radio. It's Thursday, December 12th, and we just watched the Rangers defeat the Buffalo Sabres in the toilet bowl last night. Our own Steven Pappas was at the game. He got some exciting hockey to watch while covering the sport last night. It was truly an up and down game, fast pace, high scoring, everything you want in a hockey game, if you can't tell I'm being sarcastic. But without further ado, this is Rangers Radio. We have a lot to talk about. It's going to sound monotonous because it seems to be the same thing that we've talked about for 3 or 4 weeks in a row now. It's the Rangers' inconsistent play, yet somehow, some way, they are clinging on to a wild card spot as we turn towards the end of the 2024 calendar. But how you boys doing, Steven, Zook? What's up?
The East is so bad. It's just such a bad conference right now. Nobody wants to win. Nobody wants to take a spot in the wild card. Obviously, you know, you described the game in the sarcastic way that you do. Whoever was paid a ticket and bought merchandise, bought concessions, bought a parking spot should have been refunded for that game, because for 55 minutes of that game, it was one of the worst products I've ever seen thrown out in the National Hockey League. Those two teams stink. Both of them. Buffalo, the Rangers stink. For some reason, the last 5 minutes, they were like, let's give somebody a show. Let's give everybody a show and let's have fun with this one. But for the first 55 minutes, I mean, we were looking around the press box, just kind of looking at each other like, what in the hell is happening? We started trying to count how many 3 passes in a row each team was able to put together. I think I tweeted it out. I was like, that was 20 minutes of hockey. That's the best I could say about it. It was 20 minutes of hockey. There was no structure. There was no consistency. There was very little speed. There was very little skill. It was just bad. I've gone to college games. I went to a school that was all college hockey, high level. I've seen junior games. That was the worst NHL game I've ever seen. Easily. The worst skilled NHL game I've ever seen. And the Rangers aren't missing anybody, which is insane. The Sabres at least don't have Dahlin. That's the saving grace with that one.
It was really an awful game. And what I tweeted out after the game is, I guess what we figured out is the Rangers are slightly better than the Sabres, sort of. Maybe, just because eventually someone had to win that game. So, you know, it wasn't going to go as a tie. It was going to end in a shootout at worst, but someone was going to come out with getting the points in this game. But the Rangers are just bad, boring. Any other negative word that you could potentially associate with a sports team you could say about the Rangers. And last night kind of fully illustrated where this team is right now. They have absolutely nothing going for them. Even the goals that they scored had a lot to do with luck. And I just don't even know where you go from here. The moves aren't going to be made to drastically change this team. Any drastic movement or change is going to come from the inside, internally, from players we already have on this team. And at what point does hope become something crazier where we're just like, it's insanity because we're hoping for the same thing, but every night it's being shown to us? And I forget what that quote was, but if someone shows you who they are, believe them. How many games is it going to take us before we're like, Mika stinks? Some of these guys don't even look to shoot the puck. We talk about Lafreniere, and the complaint is, oh my God, how many points would he have if he played the power play? How many points would he have if he shot the puck when he was the puck handler on a 2-on-1. Like, they were slurping the pass yesterday, and maybe it was a nice pass, but he was wide open with the goalie, 1-on-0, the way the defender was playing him, and he didn't even look to shoot. Like, never was there even an attempt to fake the shot and make the pass. Like, I'm not sure what's going on, and I just don't think it's going to happen. And I'm slowly, if you ask me right now what I think is going to happen with this team, they're going to sneak in with a wild card spot and lose in the first round, maybe take it to 7. Like, that's this team's ceiling in my mind right now, unless there's a drastic change to the makeup of this roster in the way of a trade. And I just don't know who that is right now. I don't know who that is right now, and I don't know who the Rangers could possibly get to level up that much. But the ceiling for this team was a Stanley Cup in my mind coming in here. And if you ask me to talk honestly, I can't say they're anywhere near that right now.
Would you guys believe me if I said yesterday at morning skate the Rangers worked exclusively on their power play?
It was, dude. It
First
was
one I would have, because that was clean and quick.
The next 5 they got were horrendous.
There was one that was the worst power play I've ever seen, and the second when the second unit came on the ice, and it was like they were toddlers. Like, they couldn't even skate. It was sort of embarrassing.
Was it the one where they hit the crossbar and then Cousins got a chance at the end of it? Because that's the one I'm thinking of.
They had.
I don't know if it was.
I was out there for like a minute
about.
and 5, and then all of a sudden the second unit came out. They couldn't make a pass out of their own end. They gave up 2 to 3 shorthanded opportunities. That was when the post was hit.
Cooley had a really bad shift on that power play too, and like couldn't control the puck on the one that me and Brendan are talking about.
It was in the third. It was right after they killed the end of that.
Yeah, it was like, we have a chance now to kind of put the foot on their throats and just walk away with the win here. And they just completely
Clifton hit the crossbar, and then Cousins got a good chance. Like, was it good penalty kill? Maybe. Was it bad power play? Absolutely. It was like a little bit of both. But I mean, outside of the first power play, which looked very good. The first physical power play looked very good. The rest of them stunk. And I will tell you a funny story. The Sabres every game do like a fan bet. Like, everything is sponsored by betting companies at this point.
Funny. It's so funny.
But they put like 5 options up on the scoreboard, and a fan has to pick like 3 of them for the night. And this guy comes up and goes, the Sabres over 20 shots, this, and the Sabres to kill a power play. And immediately they took a penalty, gave one up in 8 seconds. And I was like, that's that guy's fault. Go find that guy if you're a Sabres fan. He's the one.
He's chugging a beer right now, because that's not the look that you want.
Exactly.
Zook, you kind of mentioned internal changes, right? And yes, after the Trouba trade, we all know they have a boatload of cap space. I think it's like $27 million in deadline cap space that they can work with. But that really is irrelevant if you're not remotely close to being a competitive team at the deadline. So I think that ultimately it comes down to just the guys within there finding that confidence. And, you watch any of the game yesterday, it looked like 2 teams that really needed a win that were afraid to lose. That's how it was played. It was like, we don't want to make
yeah.
Everybody was gripping their stick an extra bit tight. Everybody was a little bit sluggish when it came to actually transitioning. And then it was just the continued chances that the Rangers have gotten. And, you could say whatever you want about the 3-8 stretch that they've had over their last 11, but every single game you could point to, maybe outside of the Buffalo game where they lost 6-1, they've had chances to score. And either the goalies made some crazy saves, which was the case with Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen last night, or they've just completely missed the net and fumbled their chances by overpassing. And until they could start to just bury, and you could say they scored 5 goals against Seattle, but they were down 6-3 before they woke up there. There's got to be more consistency in their game. Steven, you mentioned it. They have 1 period a game. You mentioned it off camera.
If we're lucky.
There's 1 period a game for sure that they're garbage. Like, they don't want to play.
If you could name me the last 60-minute complete game this team had, I will give you my bank account, because it is either they start like shit and finish the game well, or start the game very well and finish the game like shit. And
you're giving them too much credit. Now it's a lot of starting the game like shit, playing like shit, ending like shit. So I want to go back to these games that you're talking about.
I will say the Seattle game, they played well. They started the game well and then just collapsed in on themselves. Chicago sucked. One of the worst games I've ever seen. One of the worst efforts I've ever seen from this core, this organization. Just pitiful, downright embarrassing effort in that game. Yesterday, good start, good first. I don't know about good. That's relative, but better first. They had the better first and second period than the other team that they were playing, and then got caved in the third period. I mean, there were stretches in that third period, especially late, when they go up 2-0 and they can't put it away. Then Fox scores and they can't put it away. And if Buffalo had 30 more seconds in that game, they would have tied it. 100%. They had the pressure. The Rangers couldn't get the puck out of the zone. With like 4 minutes left in regulation, after it was 2-1, the Sabres just spent 45 to 50 seconds in the Rangers zone, and every Ranger that touched the puck completely panicked and turned it over.
Yep.
I mean, it was some of the worst closeout hockey I've ever seen. And they had two chances. They had two chances to completely shut it down, up 2-0, up 3-1, and they couldn't do it either time. It's so bad. Even when they win, it's bad. Like at this point, even when they win, it looks ugly. That every time they have a lead, they blow it. I mean, think about it. They were so close to blowing another multiple goal lead in the third period. They did it. They didn't do it in the third against Seattle, but they almost did it against Buffalo. They blew a multi-goal lead to Seattle. They blew a multi-goal lead to Montreal. And like I'm pinpointing these three games because it's the only three games like they've had leads recently. Like they've just been getting shelled every night.
Yeah, it's either they go up a couple and then just go into a shell where it doesn't work anymore, or they go down a couple, find a period or a 15-minute stretch where they put some pressure on. You're like, oh, maybe they can come back, and it just doesn't happen. And there's no in between right now. And, the last 60-minute game that they played that I could think of off the top of my head, and this could be just because of how long ago it was, but they started that road trip with a 2-0 win in Seattle. And I think that was the last game. Ago. Yeah, it was the start of that Western road trip where they won the first two games in Seattle and Vancouver, and then this demise started after that. But I can't remember a full 60. You could say they played better than Pittsburgh when they beat them last week 4-2, but it wasn't a full 60. Pittsburgh still had a ton of chances. So there's a lot to look towards. And, it's funny that we're at this point now where it's gone on for this long, because it's been at least a month and a half where both you and Zook have circled this end of December on the calendar as like, oh, this is going to be a grueling stretch. And now we're here where this weekend, Saturday, they play the Kings at 1:00 at home. Then they go on the road for 3 straight and a back-to-back included in that with the St. Louis Blues on Sunday, where you're looking at that going, we have a glimpse of hope right now where they still have a couple of games in hand on Devils. If they won all 3 of those games, they'd only be 2 points behind them. They're still in a playoff spot. They could still turn it around. It's early on, but you go on a stretch now that's brutal here, where if you go 2-6, say, you're really going into the new year with very, very little hope at turning it around. So they're going to have to do something that I don't think any of us right now believe is possible, and come out with a winning record on a road trip that you're facing 4 teams in the Eastern Conference in Carolina, the Devils, Tampa, and Florida, who are all in playoff positions. You're facing a Stars team that's one of the best teams in the West, and a couple of solid teams that aren't going to blow you away in Nashville, St. Louis, and LA.
Yeah, and the problem with this team just seems to be that the guys that are playing with that championship mentality are not guys that can carry a team. Like Berard has that going for him. I think even Sam Carrick has that going. Will Cooley, obviously, but those can't be the guys that are buying in. You need the top guys to buy in, with these guys supplementing them. And it's so funny that these were the guys we had the question marks about. If we said that some of these guys in the bottom 6 were playing the way that they're playing now coming into this season, if we knew that, we would have been like, wow, we're probably going to win the Stanley Cup, because we were expecting those top 6 to be able to carry, and at least on the power play and with goaltending, do it how they've done it in the past. So if we were getting the play from Cooley, the play from Berard since we called him up, the play from Carrick, who I think's been really solid, you would have been shocked if you found out that we were playing this bad as a team as a whole. So it's always going to be the same problem until the top 6 starts producing with how we know they can. And once the goaltenders, or if the goaltenders are able to go back to some semblance of how they were last year. I don't know if Quick's ever going to get back to that, but I think Igor can obviously get where he's been in the past. Internal is the word of this episode. Like, it's got to come from internally, one of these guys that's on the team right now. And I'll keep going back to the point where now we're at 28 games. So I don't know how much longer we can go before we say this is just who they are. And we're in a dogfight for the wild card. And that's what this season becomes. When we thought this season was, and you can listen back to all the episodes, this team better make the playoffs. This team better get to the Eastern Conference Finals. We're probably going to be sitting here in March and April praying that we make the playoffs, praying that we can get the last wild card spot. And sure, that'll be really exciting. And sure, that does hit in another way that chasing the President's Trophy does, because it becomes a little bit more do or die. But I'd much rather be where we were last year at the end of the year than where I think we're going to be at the end of this season.
I think the funniest thing about this entire month and a half stretch of hockey is you can see the casual fans understand that it's not last year. It's very slowly, your friends that watch the games maybe once a month, the people online that, just, watch with a positive attitude, you're just starting to see them be like, maybe this team isn't very good. And the Chicago game was huge in that they looked terrible against the worst statistically team in the league. We've had the argument that, is this team the worst in the National Hockey League? And I would say at the moment it is, because night in and night out, there's not a lead that's safe. Every deficit feels like it's too much. There's either no energy or there's no execution. And that is the making of a bad team. Whether they win games or lose games, they look ugly. Their 2 wins in this 2-week stretch against Montreal and Buffalo have been disgustingly ugly. Blowing a lead to Montreal only to win it in the final minute. Almost blowing 2 separate 2-goal leads with 5 minutes left to play against Buffalo and then winning it. There's no game here that I can sit and say from start to finish, they were the better team. Even against Pittsburgh, they gave up the first goal, responded. That's the best game they've played in months. Give up a goal, respond. Take the lead, give one up, respond. And then score another one and win the game. That, I genuinely thought at that moment we were looking at a much different team the day after they traded Trouba, and it instantly went back into the shitter the next 2 games. It's the craziest thing I've seen this whole season, is that in that moment against Pittsburgh, I sat there and said, this team looks different because they gave up a first goal. They didn't sit and pout. They immediately got it back. And then when they took the lead and gave up the lead, they immediately got it back again. That was what last year was. This year has been any adversity you fold like a lawn chair. Still haven't won a game when you trail going into the third period. There are so many problems from top to bottom with this team that, Zook, you say the ceiling is a wild card spot. Yes, the ceiling is the ceiling should be second or third in the division. But the floor, what are we talking the floor of this team? Top
James
5
Higgins.
pick? Are we talking top 5 pick? Is it realistically that bad that this team could come out of this season either making the playoffs or a top 5 pick?
Realistically, the disparity right now between the Rangers and the playoff spots versus the Rangers in the bottom of the conference is really not that far off. And even a team like the Devils, yes, they have a cushion, but they can't be comfortable because most of these teams below them have a couple of games at hand. And I'm not saying the Devils are a bad team. I'm just saying, when you look at the numbers, there's a ton of, I don't want to say competitiveness, because it's a lot of crappy teams that are kind of piled together right now. But the Rangers are 2 points behind Boston with a couple of games at hand on them. They're a point above Tampa. Tampa has 2 games at hand on the Rangers. They're 2 points ahead of the Islanders, who have won 3 games all year. They just keep losing games in overtime. They're a couple of points above Pittsburgh, a couple of points behind all these teams that they should be well clear of. And it just all ties back to the little things for me. We talked about it off camera about Zibanejad, the penalty he took in 20 seconds of the game last night. He's just not moving his feet. He's puck watching. And yeah, it's extremely noticeable with him right now because everybody's eyes are focused on him. But it's not just him. It's the entirety of the roster. You look at the third period, there's instance after instance where instead of going to the man or taking the man or making the smart play, they fumble the puck, they puck watch, they move their feet, they're not covering, they're getting beat to the far post. Last year, one of the things I noticed, and you could say this team's never been really great defensively, and sure, last year they were covering their men. They were moving, switching. They were on almost like on a string. They were in sync together. I can count at least 7 to 10 times in the last 4 games alone where they've been beat around the post on a wraparound attempt. And there's just no defensive help on the other side. It's just one guy chasing him. Where's the support? Where's the rest of the team? And to me, that's why I don't lose faith that it's fixable, because it's all internal. It's not anything like they don't have the skill, they don't have the talent around them to actually come back. The Blackhawks, they're in every game, but they find ways to lose because they don't have the skill. The Rangers are in every game and finding ways to lose because they're just not doing the little things right. And if you start to change that, which I hate to be that guy, but it does start with the coach. I mean, after a certain amount of time of just systems completely breaking down, you got to look behind the bench and say, what are you saying to this team in the locker room? Like, what happened to the Laviolette we all saw on the road to the Winter Classic that was throwing stuff around, that was getting guys amped up? They all look dead every 2 seconds during a game. As soon as a goal's given up, you could just see their faces go, oh, it's over. How many times in an NHL season, especially the last 2 years, have we seen a team be down 3-4 goals and come back and win a game? There's just no lead that's safe anymore unless you're playing the New York Rangers, who just shoot themselves in the foot and say, all right, we'll get them next time. It's got to stop.
Yeah, they're not a good team. They are not a good team right now, stylistically, talent-wise right now. It's just not there. There's nothing that you watch this team and you can at least fall back on and say, oh, I think we're going to make the wild card because of this. Like, you think it's going to be eventually Igor is going to get hot enough to carry us to the wild card at the minimum. That's what I'm going with right now. And that's why when we say what's the floor for this team, I'm still going to think Igor is going to get right for long enough a stretch during the season that we're not going to get a top 5 pick unless we do that thing where we somehow go from having the worst odds to winning the lottery or coming in second. But
you mean rigged? You mean
yes? I wasn't going to say that, but
lottery?
yeah. But we've hung our hat on it all year, and no matter what, because of Igor, I'm still going to feel this way probably until we really, if we ever at all go further down the standings. But I'm just looking at the teams below us, and yeah, we're not even beating all of them, and we're looking bad against some of them, but I still think, and maybe it's Stockholm syndrome that this core has us all in right now, we're still better than these teams. But maybe these teams are now looking at the Rangers, and after seeing how bad we are, not being biased, are suddenly saying, we're not worse than that team. And when these teams below us are trying to make the playoffs, we're now the team they're looking at. Like, hey, we can hop that team because they stink. So it's just a very, very interesting time where now the one thing that I can say for certain is I look at the teams that are winning the Metro, and after watching them a decent amount the past few weeks, we're definitely not in that tier. So I think where we fit is amongst these wild card teams right now, and that's not a spot we ever thought we were going to be in.
After last night, I think I can confidently say that there is one team in the Eastern Conference that I'm confident the Rangers are better than, and it is Buffalo. And I'm not sure I'm confident in that.
Yeah, but I don't even, right? Because at 30 more seconds, we all think they tie it. So,
there's three. There's three. Buffalo,
Montreal,
Pittsburgh, and Montreal. The Rangers will beat Montreal every time, and the Rangers will beat Pittsburgh every time. There's just something about Pittsburgh that the Rangers are better than, and that team is garbage too. We might be a little bit biased right now. Are
they better than the Islanders? The Islanders have 9 wins or 11 wins. No,
they're not better than the Islanders, and that's because the Islanders work. The Islanders actually try; they just stink. And first of all,
I'd rather a team like that.
You know that obviously Stefan, who covers the Islanders, one of my best friends. He mentioned to me, he's like, Barzal and Duclair are a week away.
Yep. I
So
was
we're
on that.
watching the Islanders with this lens, and they don't even have their two top skilled forwards right now. You add them to what Nelson and Lee are doing, it's like, oh well, maybe the Islanders sneak up on the Rangers. The only teams that are going to determine the Rangers season are the Rangers, right? That's it. It's the Rangers can play like they did the first 6 games, then they're going to be right back in that conversation with the Carolina, Washington, and the Devils of the division. So it I can't keep talking about it because it's like, how many
That's the whole
times can we
point.
keep reiterating the same point?
I was just about to bring that up. At what point is it just old news? We're saying the same thing.
That's what I'm
And I feel
saying. We're
like
27 games in, right? Like the sample size is big enough.
It's big enough, but it also is big enough on the other side where you still have 50 plus games remaining, where it's like they really control their own destiny. And I'm not saying that they're going to become this team that we expected last year or the team that we expect them to be after we watched them go 5-0-1. But I mean, how long can you really anticipate that they just play this poorly? Because if they keep playing this poorly, Jury is changing things. I don't even know what he's going to do, but there's going to be something drastic that we might all hate. But he's going to do something because he knows if he doesn't, James Dolan's going to be just as drastic and get rid of him. So,
by the way, shout out the NHL scheduling again. You guys continue to just knock it out of the ballpark. Remember 2 years ago when the Rangers played only 3 games in the season against the Islanders and they were all before Christmas?
Yeah.
This year, the first game against the Islanders is February 25th.
no, they already beat the Islanders once this year.
Oh, I forgot about that. That's how unmemorable that game was. Well, their next game against the Islanders is February 25th. It's December 12th. What are we doing? Playing 4 times?
March 3rd when we play the Islanders. I haven't
Christ
gone to a single game
almighty.
yet. I haven't
It's
gone to a
just-
single game yet.
You're not
Everybody
missing
wanted
much.
expansion, and that's what happens. Now
I think
you
I'm
play-
going January 2nd against Boston as my first game, and then January 9th against the Devils. I think those are my first 2 games. But
Okay, here's
excited.
my issue in scheduling also becomes I like that baseball, you're now playing everybody every year because it's 162 games and you can do that. It's 82 games in the NHL and NBA. You don't have to play every team in the Western Conference every single season. I might be alone in this take. I think you could play more division and conference games, and you don't have to play. You don't have to go on a West Coast road trip every single season.
What if you played one of the divisions in the West twice, the other one just once? So you played 24 games against the West, and then the rest of your games are against the East. That way you could stockpile a little bit more.
So Steven, like the COVID year when it was really just division games, right? For like those 56.
It was only division games.
Yeah.
I think playing the West and playing like the West playing
grows
the
the
East
game.
helps because there are styles that like the Rangers might be able to hold their own against certain teams in the West better than they can against the bottom feeder teams in the East, because the East always tends to be more speed based and skill based. The West is always the heavier hitters, that gritty style. And the Rangers have fared well against the West, whereas in the East, they sometimes kind of concave against the speed. Like how many times you see them lose against Columbus or bottom feeder East teams that they should beat, whereas they go out West and they've had success in the past. So I think that the disparity in styles does give some element to watching the game that's fun. But yeah, the good old days where they were playing the Islanders 5-6 times and the Devils 5-6 times, and you're like, oh, this is fun. It's like now all of a sudden we're counting the days between games, and it's like there's 75 days between Rangers and any rival game. Like they didn't even play a Metro team until the second month of the season. It was just boring.
When's the earliest Gabe Perreault can come to our team?
Playoffs probably. Before the playoffs. Well, it depends how BC does.
He's so good.
Do you guys remember how utterly dog
good.
shit the Central Division was in 2021?
I remember a lot of things about hockey that all seem to be fond in comparison to what I'm watching right now.
Well, 2021, that COVID year, the Central Division comprised of the Hurricanes, who finished first, the Panthers, who finished second, the Lightning, who won the Stanley Cup, and the Predators, who finished fourth. And then it was the Dallas Stars. That's a good team, but the bottom 3, Chicago, Detroit, Columbus, all sub 25 goal differentials for that year. Just an unbelievable crock of shit at the end of that division. I mean, even the East Division was a gauntlet outside of Buffalo because they had one of their worst seasons ever, and maybe the Devils. But the Flyers were coming off of a year where they were the first seed in that COVID playoffs. The Islanders were coming off an Eastern Conference final appearance, Game 7. The Bruins were the Bruins. The Caps are prime Caps, and the Penguins are prime Penguins. And the Rangers just kind of snuck in around there and, scored 9 goals against Philly one time and looked like shit against Washington 3 more times. So I will say that is my favorite. One of my favorite Ranger games of all time was that 9. Was it 9-0? The 9-0 game against Philadelphia.
I thought Philly scored. That was, one of the only games that year I did not watch.
Wasn't it
really?
I was visiting a friend in South Carolina. Was at a bar and my phone was just going nuts. Every time I looked at my phone, it was like Mika Zibanejad goal, Mika Zibanejad goal, and I look at my phone now, longing for that notification.
That game
just doesn't come.
That game was 9-0. The Rangers scored 2 in the first and 7 in the second. They couldn't hit 10.
It was every other shift they were scoring.
It was every other shift. I remember first of all, Mika had 4 in that night?
Yeah,
right?
Who was the coach of that game? You remember
3.
that?
Yeah. That was a fun one.
It was Chris Knobloch.
That was a fun one.
I do remember that.
And who did I want them to hire, Zook? If for the listeners that are new, Chris Knobloch. Yeah.
Who do you think scored the first goal in that game?
I was just about to ask you that, so I won't answer.
I won't. I don't know that because I was.
It was
not watching.
Brendan Lemieux.
Was it Brendan Lemieux? He's a free agent right now. If anybody wants.
Lemieux and Panarin to start the game, and then a span of 7 goals. I mean, they started a minute and a half into the period, and it was 7 goals over 20 minutes. I mean, Buchnevich at 138, Buchnevich at 338, Trouba, LOL, at 730, Zibanejad at 830, Zibanejad at 1430, Zibanejad at 1830, and then Hedl at 1930. It was like every 2 minutes there was a goal.
We do have to talk about something serious because we've kind of just lost track a little bit. Keandre Miller got hurt in the game last night against Buffalo. I tweeted it out that I thought it was from the Greenway hit. That's the only thing I could think of what it was from. I know that you mentioned in the third that he didn't come back out. And I'm watching that game, and it was the first game in at least 2 months where I was like, Keandre Miller actually looks active. His stick looks good. He's actually been in position the majority of this game. And then, of course, that happens. And now... So what I wanted to ask you guys was, who do you think they go to? Because my choice would be Mackey. I don't want to see Ruido play. I want to see somebody that we haven't seen before. And Mackey kind of gave them a little bit of a spark last year when they were struggling. And I don't need him to fight. I just need him to play okay. But maybe some fresh blood. Let's get somebody younger up here. Maybe even Matthew Robertson gets his chance.
Why not? I mean,
I
there's so many. You're a team that is so down bad at the moment. And I'm going to steal a line from Molly Walker that texted me yesterday that was like, this looks like two teams trying to compete with who's less down bad than the other. Because that's what it was. That's exactly what yesterday was. That Miller injury, I know I had said some things last week. TikTok really loved that one with Keandre Miller and his agent. But that was, a really good game from him yesterday. He was active. His stick was in the right spot. He was in the right spot. He was starting the rush. He was blowing by a defenseman. He was doing everything that we saw that Keandre Miller did last night. Unfortunately didn't come out. And Brendan, you did tip me off on that one. I saw your tweet about it, and I'm like, I haven't seen. I looked down the bench. I'm like, it looks like someone's not there, and never saw him out. Saw the shift chart, realized he wasn't out there, and lo and behold, like a minute later, the PR team goes, "Hey, he's not coming back." So obviously, didn't get an update on him yesterday. As the Rangers do, they don't really talk about injuries, and as hockey does in general, they don't really talk about injuries. So upper body. Again, one of the dumbest rules in sports is upper body, lower body, instead of specifically, listing what an injury is. Because again, we've talked about it. There's betting implications, right? Like there's betting implications on everything. That's why the NFL has to disclose injuries, and they have to disclose them weeks or days in advance. But that was just so frustrating because you finally see him have this good game, and he ends up having to leave because of an injury, which just sucks. I hate to see that.
Yeah, it was like as soon as you could see the glimpse of maybe something positive to build on, and we don't know the extent of his injury. Obviously, we're not going to speculate on that, but you got to hope that maybe a couple of days off he can recuperate. But whenever somebody gets hit like that, and it wasn't an overly aggressive hit where you're like, oh man, it's memorable, but he was jolted a little bit. You never know what the next snapping can mean to the head, and the Rangers have a familiarity with players that have concussions, so they know what to look for, and that's always what I speculate whenever somebody leaves the game, because it honestly reminded me of Edel against Carolina, where he got the better of the hit, played, and then never came back and was done for the year. And now you look at this one, and it's like, I'm not saying Keandre Miller is going to be done for the year. He doesn't have the same history as Edel, but playing the rest of the period without any noticeable signs of any injury and then just not coming back usually means that there's something that was a little bit delayed in the head area. So hopefully it's not major and he'll be back in no time. But
can I say this? And no,
yeah.
A lot of people are not going to take this very well. Miller doesn't play the third period. Third period is the worst defensive period of the game.
Yeah, it was, which usually
Lindgren had to play more.
Which I've been advocating for the opposite. I wanted to see him scratch, but you sent that picture. I don't know where you got it from in the text chat, Zook, where Fox is like plus offense, plus defense, and then when he's with Lindgren, it's all the way at the other side.
He's
and
like the worst defenseman in the league with Lindgren, and like the Norris Trophy winner with that. Like it couldn't be more opposite.
That's what I've been saying on this show so many times. Is all those people that are like, oh, you got to get rid of Fox because he hasn't looked like himself this year. Well, the two partners he's had this year are Ryan Lindgren and Keandre Miller. And the two most complained about names on defense outside of Jacob Trouba, who's no longer on the team, were Ryan Lindgren and Keandre Miller. So who does Cale Makar play with? Devon Taves, right? Nobody's complaining about Devon Taves. Quinn Hughes plays with Philip Roenick. Yeah, who's Philip Roenick all of a sudden came into himself when he went from Detroit over to the Vancouver Canucks. So these guys have quality partners on the other side. Right now, Adam Fox does not have a quality partner. And
Adam Fox has a wet napkin and a block of concrete as his defense partner.
And people, oh, he's too soft. He's not physical enough. That's never been his game. He won a Norris Trophy without being physical enough. He was the best defenseman on this team perennially without being physical enough because Ryan Lindgren was not deteriorated to this point where he was the one going back, retrieving the pucks, and giving Fox the space to do it. Ryan Lindgren can't do that anymore. And now you're seeing that problem. And I think that when they find a way to, because this is going to happen this year, you can bookmark this right now and mark my words, they're going to go out and get a left defenseman that has size at the deadline, and they are going to place him smack next to Adam Fox because that is going to be the thing that's going to get him going. And yes, he scored his first goal of the year last night. Yes, it was an empty net goal.
He needed it.
He needed it bad. He still has 24 assists on the team. He's still second on the team in points. And you never know what can get somebody going goals-wise because offensively, I'm not going to say he's been bad. He's got 24 assists in 28 games. But he needed to start scoring. That was his first goal since the last game of the regular season last year.
He's 13th on the team, and he's 13th in the league in assists with a team that doesn't create anything and doesn't score that much anymore. So
you took him
so
off
underrated.
The team, I don't think people realize how important holding the zone is for the New York Rangers, especially a team that doesn't forecheck. There is not a single player in this league better than Adam Fox.
Like Connor McDavid, Jack Hughes, both also have 24 assists. Those are the names of the guys that he's tied with. More than Aho, more than Sam Reinhart, more than Victor Hedman, more than Panarin, like more than Barkov. Like he's elite. He's still elite, and we're shitting on him. And he's elite with a huge negative next to him. Not even a neutral that he has to carry. Some guy who's like crazy negative. A guy who's so bad next to him that it's bringing a guy who's elite down so bad. So this is a guy, he's the least of our problems, Adam Fox. If anything, we don't understand how good he's been this season for us and where we would be, like you were saying, Brendan, without him. Like if we didn't have this guy, this is the potential to be the worst defensive team and defensive unit of all time, the way that they play. Like we should thank whoever that he's on the ice for 23 to 25 minutes a game, running out our power play and creating the way he is, because this is a team where if you can say what it lacks more than anything, just guys that can create. with the puck on their stick, especially from the back line like him. Besides Jones, it's guys that get spooked if you put any pressure on them.
Yeah, Brendan, you mentioned him being the ability of Fox to keep the puck in the zone. And I mean, one of the Rangers' best chances last night came off that. Like in the first period, right after Zibanejad's goal, the Sabres tried to clear it out of the zone. He keeps it in, finds Panarin right at the top of the circle, and UPL gets a good glove save on it. But
their power
without
play
him,
goal was a result of him keeping the puck in.
How many times,
Exactly.
Brendan, did I say last year that was like the one thing why our power play was so good? Fox keeping it in the zone is so debilitating for the penalty kill, because you think you get the puck, you think you're clearing it. If you're the guy that does it, or you're on the ice with the guy that does it, you almost like are about to like breathe a sigh of relief that the puck is about to leave the zone, and you let your guard down for a split second, and then it's still in the zone, and you got to get that edge back when you were basically about to skate off the ice and get a change when you might have been on the ice for a minute. So I think that skill that Adam Fox has to keep it in the zone is such an elite skill, where we saw it last night, but we haven't seen it as much. And it's a unique skill, and it's high hockey IQ, because you're basically guessing where they're going to try and clear the zone. But yeah, like you said, it gave us one or two of our better chances last night. And it's just another example of what this guy brings. Like, that's such a subtle thing where we don't realize how much it actually impacts the deeper numbers. And like I was saying, he's not the problem at all. At all. He's just being hampered down by terrible defense around him. Like, he can't cover everybody.
So we got a couple of minutes left, so we got to do predictions. We didn't do it last time.
Hang on. Wait. You know what we haven't talked about in this episode?
Let's hear it.
Since our last recording, Jacob Trouba was traded and Igor Shesterkin was signed to 8 years.
That's actually facts. I think it's just been talked about so much we haven't even discussed it.
I think I think both were just like the Igor thing. Like, it was nice. Like, I was happy about it. I always thought it was going to happen.
I'm like, when are we going to bring it up? When are we going to bring it up? And here we are. End of the show is now. It's so much.
I was
shit
ready
has
to wrap
happened,
it
man.
up. I thought that it's been talked about so much by all of us on Twitter that we just were like,
Igor, I always thought was going to happen.
So much has happened since then.
Yeah, Igor, I always thought was going to happen. So yeah, it was big news that it did with the actual numbers. But I always knew he was staying at the end of the day. I've been saying that since the beginning. And the Trouba stuff, like, good riddance. And the funniest thing about it is he's playing just as bad on the Ducks. And now the West Coast gets to see how bad he is. Like, it's so funny. He was on the ice for like both 5-on-5 goals, I believe, last night. And how they happened was so funny to watch, because, we now have a different vantage point of it. He was just standing there. And there was 3 guys on the other team that went tic-tac-toe, and the man didn't move. I swear he did not move. And it ended up in the back of the net.
Since all that happened on last Friday, I've had a couple people that would know sort of confirm what we've talked about on this show, in that he was just disassociated.
Yeah, they wrote about that. He completely checked out when they knew that we were thinking about trading him, which you can't have. That's literally the worst case scenario for a captain.
Not even
literally.
I'm saying not even in the last few weeks. I mean, from day one of the season. Yeah, since day one of the season.
Once he got floated over the summer, they wrote that he was completely disassociated, and you could just see that could absolutely kill you. And the sad thing is, like with the Seattle game, after beating Pittsburgh, with Pittsburgh, answering us a few times, the start against Seattle, I was thinking, like, damn, Trouba was that big of a problem that getting rid of him has really turned the tides. But, we're kind of back to where we were, with the veteran leadership still lacking. And it was never just one guy.
No.
Like, I tweeted it, like, getting rid of 8 didn't cure our 55 problem, our 79 problem, albeit he was good last night, and our 93 problem, albeit last night he scored. But it was never just a one guy problem. That was maybe the biggest illustration of it, because he's the guy wearing the C on his chest. But no one else has stepped up to the plate since he's left. No. You really got to find that guy. And again, it's not going to be Bedard. It can't be Cooley, as much as like we maybe want it to be, and we're falling in love with that guy. It's got to be one of these top guys.
There's not a guy on this roster. There's not a guy on this roster that can fill that captain position at the moment. Well, Trocheck, you just don't know the longevity.
I
you
like
don't know.
Lafreniere about that. I think that he's got that vibe.
Absolutely.
I want him to start
I
playing better. I
could
want him
not
to start
disagree
playing
with
better.
you anymore.
I
Lafreniere,
think he's got that group camaraderie.
He's probably
he
not ready yet. He's probably not ready.
mentally still feels like a child. Like
I think
anytime
that's
you
what they
see,
need. Stop giving me these veteran leaders. Like, McDavid was what, 18? Landeskog was what, 18?
I don't
How much
mean-
time does Trocheck
I
left on his
don't mean it. Hang
contract?
on, wait. When I say you, I don't mean like he's physically young. I mean
No,
like
I know what you mean.
he's
He's not serious enough.
he's not serious. He's just not a serious
Which is
person.
why I kind of like that, because I feel like right now there's like a wet napkin over that room where it's just completely way too serious. But I alluded to the Trouba trade twice in this episode. Now that I'm thinking about it, we never talked about it.
Never.
But I think that trade was huge. And say what you want about Jury, but he was able to get rid of Trouba's full contract. If you asked me, I would have said no way, shape, or form was that happening.
Thank you, Pat Verbeek.
They have, like I said earlier in the show when we didn't talk about it, they have $27 million in trade deadline cap space because of that move.
And need it.
I was so surprised that they let that break that Shesterkin signed on the same exact day. I was even more surprised when I saw that it was a full no movement clause again. Not surprised that they gave it to him, but surprised that they were announcing that because of the whole debacle that they've been going through the last 2.5 weeks because of no movement clauses. And they just, here you go again, we're going to do it again. And now, granted, Shesterkin probably was like, I'm not signing without that protection, which is why he wanted to be here. But there's an element to that was so ironic, because on the same day that they announced that Shesterkin extended was the same day that all these random media people are like, oh, no one's going to want to come to the Rangers. Players are not going to want to be there anymore because of how they treated Trouba.
It's such a joke.
If he was able to block a trade.
The high horse that the Canadian media is on at the moment about Chris Drury is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to say anything when Tampa circumvents the cap. You're not going to go after Vegas when Mark Stone's out for 4 weeks in April, right before the seasons or the trade deadline, right before the playoffs starts. They have league favorites. And it shows.
Forget the other teams. Forget the other teams in this whole thing. Jacob Trouba used his no trade protection to block trades. The Rangers then used the said protection and worked around it. They gave him a list. He said, I'm willing to go to Anaheim. He's now in Anaheim. There is nothing wrong. That is the letter of the moderate no trade clause.
It's not Chris Drury's fault that Pat Verbeek said you don't have to retain anything. It's not his fault.
Got rid of him. Now, the San Jose one, okay, you can have a little more gripe with how they handled that, because obviously Gaudreau wanted to be in a contender. But, guess what? You don't perform well enough over the course of your tenure. You're making money that I don't think anybody's going to argue you shouldn't be making. You have to be moved in the cap era. Now, if the NHL salary cap was $150 million, I think Barclay Goodrow is likely still on this team because it doesn't hurt the same way it does right now. And that's another thing we haven't talked about, is that there was a report that the new CBA can go up by 5% in the cap when it's signed, which means it would be at $100 million already. So now your 11.5 to Shesterkin is a lot more
what I've been saying this whole time.
We should do an archives episode on this podcast, because we've talked about all this crap at length in the earlier episode. We talked about the cap, how the 11.5 wouldn't be that bad. We talked about Trouba and his contract situation, how retaining cap would be huge. We talked about all this stuff.
I remember specifically talking about Trouba being checked out, and here we are after the fact.
The whole 3 episodes at least that I can recall, we have alluded to the fact that we don't have sources, we don't know for sure, but there's no way you could play as a captain knowing that this team does not want you on the roster anymore. And now it all comes out.
If that's the one thing I've been saying this whole time, we don't have sources. If we can see it, everybody can see it. We're not we're not Nostradamus here.
No, maybe we are.
Maybe not you two. But listen, I'm an idiot with a microphone, right? Like, I got yelled at yesterday by social media because I posted a video of Kreider not hugging Snyder, and it turned into some shitstorm. Grow up, people. Have a little fun. That's my biggest gripe with social media. I grew up playing baseball. Like, hockey, I've only watched my entire life. I didn't necessarily play it. I don't know what the drills are. I don't know that he's doing that for it. To me, it looks like he's going to give him a hug, which obviously was not going to be the case, but it looked like it. Yeah. So let's quit it. Let everybody get off their also mental high horse. Oh, you never went to a hockey. Shut up. Shut
Yeah,
up and go to bed.
if you
Go
want,
outside.
if you want an X's and O's episode, I'll be happy to oblige. But it's not as fun as just the casual conversation about
Go
it. So,
touch
but
grass, dude. It was so much like honestly, that was my first time ever experiencing a Ranger practice up close. Unbelievable. I mean, even we shit on them all the time. We say they're a bad team. Just seeing the
they're
skill
still
and
so
speed.
good. They're still so
It's
good.
the NHL players are just disgusting. Also, funny story. We were all sitting there. Some dude walked down with a camcorder like it's 1981 with a monopod and started filming Rangers practice. And I'm like, what? We're all sitting there like, what the hell is this guy doing? Like, what?
Check out in the arena.
What on earth is happening?
I know Zook's got to run so quick. They got the Kings, Blues, and Predators before our next episode. Who do you got, Zook?
Damn,
I know
this
we
is an
said quick.
interesting slate. I'm gonna go 1-1-1. 1-1-1.
All right, so
I was
keep it
waiting
with
yesterday. We're still sitting here at 26, I think, consecutive games or 25 consecutive games now without an overtime. Might be 26 now.
Yeah, it's gotta happen, right?
It's insane. I was fully
if they
prepared.
lost 4 of these games during the streak in overtime, nobody would be complaining right now. They'd be sitting near third place.
Yeah, if they sucked more in overtime, it'd be great.
Yep.
But
look at the Islanders.
Exactly. Look at the Islanders' whole existence. It's half of it sucking in overtime. I'm going 1-2. I think they lose to LA. I think they get the shit kicked out of them by St. Louis again, and I think they beat Nashville or flip flop one of the two. I can't sit here and say they're going to win 2 of 3. They haven't won back-to-back games in months. It feels like months.
Yeah, I'm going to the game Saturday, so I have to say they're going to win, or else I'll be miserable going. And I have to. I can leave miserable. I can't go in there being miserable. I'm going to say 2-0-1. Actually, I think that they win the back-to-back, and I think that they lose to Nashville in OT, which will get people going. But we just talked about no OT games. Let's give them one.
All right.
Every week
I
feel
keep
like
saying they're going to go
game.
2-0-1, and I keep saying they're going to do it. So eventually they have to, and I'll look good. When it doesn't, I'll clip it.
And they keep going 0-3.
They keep going 0-3, so maybe I'll switch it up. 0-3 this week.
Oh, God.
All right. Well, thank you all for watching and listening. We appreciate it. And hopefully they do go 2-0-1, and we'll have a little bit more positivity on the next episode.
I'll take 1-1-1.
Let's just start with 1-0. Just start the next game.
Let's start with
1-0.
one win. Exactly, one win. Let's string a couple together here. All right. Thank you all. We'll see you next week.
Peace.